Hello and welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Forecast. I'm your host, Trevor Scott, coming at you guys with another solo video. And today we're going to be breaking down our home league draft. Matt wasn't able to join me for this one, but he was a part of this draft, so we will be getting into his team a little bit too, because he took a strategy that some of you might not want to take, but I did want to highlight how teams can turn out if you do decide to wait a long time at quarterback. So without further ado, let's take a look at the draft board. So I know this is going to be a lot to look at right away off the top, so bear with me here. 10 team, SuperFlex, 3 wide receiver, and it's very different than your mock drafts, right? It's very difficult to prepare for these type of drafts because the quarterbacks can go at any point, and everybody kind of has their own player evaluations. There isn't really a ton of analysis out there, which is what our channel is targeted at, right? So that's why I wanted to go over our home league draft to make sure that, we kind of highlight some of the trends that we see. And then if you're able to translate it into your leagues or translate it into more success during your drafts, hopefully this will help. So as you can see, quarterbacks, right, in our league, we've been highlighting this all off season. Only 2 in the first round this year, right? We had 4 last year, only 2 this year. And Josh Allen going 4 overall, Hurts going 6 overall. And I think that this is something that may be unique to us, but isn't entirely unique to our draft, right? Is that, sometimes it's just quarterback, but knowing our league settings is why we always highlight that it's okay to wait at quarterback here. So getting into the waiting at quarterback, right, and kind of highlighting who you can get is Matt's team here at 8, right? So you see right here in the 8 spot, right, he waited all the way until round 9 to pick Matthew Stafford, and he's got Matthew Stafford and he's got Geno Smith. So 2 guys border on the top 20. Both should be solid starters. Both have a decent amount of upside. We saw a ton of upside from Geno Smith in 2022. And Matthew Stafford has elite weapons around him, so he should be able to rack up a ton of passing yards. 4,500 yards is definitely not outside of his range of outcomes. And you can see what kind of team you can put around the weaker quarterbacks here, right? He's got Justin Jefferson, Garrett Wilson, and Chris Olave right up front. You will see that he would pass on Puka Nacua, so you do know that we're not as high on Puka Nacua here, and our league kind of agrees. And I think a lot of the leagues out there are also going to agree. There might be one guy that goes in on Puka a little bit earlier than the rest of the league would. But getting those 3 wide receivers off the top in a 3 wide receiver league is something that's going to be very difficult for the rest of us to compete with, because it's so much value up top because of how many quarterbacks are going. And then getting Derrick Henry in the 4th is also a great way to start his running back core. A lot of touchdown upside, although not a ton of receiving game work. Najee Harris here, right at 5'4", one of the worst picks in the draft, in my opinion. As running back 12, that's just way too high, and opened the door for Matt to pick Devon Achane, who is going to be a major factor for him and even elevate his team's upside that much further, right? And then McBride, Walker, Pickens, kind of filling out the rest of the starting lineup, getting a additional flex player before going back in at quarterback, knowing that almost everybody else already had 2, right? So at this point in the draft at 8-3, he could have gone quarterback, but looking at it, right, the 7th pick, 6th pick, 5th pick, 4th pick, 3rd pick, 2nd pick, and 1st pick all had 2 quarterbacks already. So if only way that he misses out on a quarterback between these picks is if somebody goes in on a 3rd. And so I personally was taking note of that, right? I am the 5th pick here. This is my team that started off with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And so I took note of that, and I was thinking, like, there's no way I can just let Cousins fall into his lap and let him get Cousins and Stafford or Cousins and Rodgers. So instead of going in on a flex player, and you guys know I love Calvin Ridley, and this, funny enough, one of us didn't get Calvin Ridley in this draft, and I could have in the 9th round. I decided to get in on a 3rd quarterback and try to do my part to block off that ability for him to get the best quarterbacks possible. So going over my team, I also took the receivers early, right? I took Amon-Ra in the 1st round. I really feel good about that pick. Chase obviously having a little bit of a holdout, Jefferson with the quarterback situation. And I got very lucky at quarterback early, right? So I kind of went a different strategy from Matt. He went completely 0 quarterback. I went hero quarterback in this league. And waited for my 2nd quarterback all the way down into the 7th round. And I feel very fortunate that I got Goff there, because I do really like Goff this year, as you guys know. But I did also get my receivers up top, right? So I went Marvin Harrison in the 3rd, and I went Devontae Adams in the 4th. I really would have liked to get Pacheco at that 4-6 spot. So I did kind of get sniped there a little bit, but you guys know I love getting in on receivers early too. Matt and I have highlighted that constantly in 3 wide receiver leagues. It's just so important to try and get an edge there because running back, they get hurt at such a higher rate. And, there are good running backs that you can fill out your RB2 spot with specifically later in the draft. And I did get Sam Laporta in the 5th round. Another thing that you guys out there drafting might not see a lot of, right? Since the rosters are so deep, we've kind of gotten used to in this league, the tight ends getting pushed down further than you see in other places. And I feel very fortunate to have gotten Sam Laporta in the 5th round there. I was talking with another league mate, and, you can see the league mate I was talking with got Kittle at 801 and just doesn't see that big of a difference between Laporta and Kittle. So his opinion on it was that you should just wait at tight end until you get one of those 7, 8, maybe Engram, and that you could still end up with a relatively similar amount of production. Now, I obviously don't agree with that. I think that one of the top 4 is going to be a major advantage. Maybe Kincaid gets in there, but I also think Engram has a really high floor with how many receptions he's going to get. So, I was very happy to get Laporta in the 5th round there where I did. Highlighting some of the other picks around here, around the draft board that I thought were really good. We had DJ Moore at the end of the 6th round. I thought that was extremely low for him to be going. I thought that's a very high upside player as his wide receiver 2, right? Set up his team with 2 quarterbacks and 2 running backs early, got Tyreek Hill to anchor his receivers, and still ended up with DJ Moore. I think he's going to be very happy with that pick. Another pick that I also really liked in the later rounds was obviously Rashee Rice at 7-10, kind of over on the right side of the board there. He continued to fall. I think there is still a little bit of concern around suspension, but overall, he should be performing as a top 25 wide receiver as long as he's on the field, and it looks like he's going to start the season with the team. So I think overall, that was a very good selection as well. And then another one that I did also really like, and I had the opportunity to take him multiple times and didn't, was Kenneth Walker at 7.8. I do really think that if he sees a little bit more of a role in the passing game, he's going to be able to elevate much beyond this, and he gets drafted well before that in a lot of other drafts that I've seen. So I thought that was a really good value at that spot. So also something that I did in this draft, right in the 6th round, I decided to take Kamara, and I did it over Rachaad White, who is somebody that I really like. But the reason I took Kamara at this point is I didn't want to miss on my first running back, and I think with a new offensive system in Tampa Bay, that there's at least a little concern that they don't run the ball quite so much with a guy that, averages 3.8 yards per carry. And with Bucky Irving, there's a possibility, maybe 20% of the targets that go to running backs go to Bucky Irving instead of all of it going to Rachaad White. So I decided to go with the player I felt like was a little bit safer, had a little bit safer floor, albeit a lot less upside than White. Because if White does get similar rushes and takes all the work just like he did last year, he has a much higher ceiling, I think, in that Tampa Bay offense than Kamara does on the ground, who obviously isn't a big rusher, right? He's not going to be carrying the ball for 1,000 yards and probably won't even top 850. So he should have a lot of targets, high volume in the passing game. And so that's why I decided to make that pick as my first running back. If it had been my second running back, if I had gone with, say, Devon Achane in round 5, I probably would have taken Rachaad White over Kamara there. And the other reason I decided to go running back at that position, because I was, getting antsy, a little bit antsy for my second quarterback, is I had looked in the 6th round, and the 4 teams between me and my next pick all had already taken 2 quarterbacks. So I knew Goff was going to make it back to me there at that 7th pick. So another thing that it ended up playing out this way, but I'm not sure I like it that much, is I ended up with Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, and Jared Goff on my team. So I am all in on Detroit. If something happens to one of those guys, it's probably going to diminish the value of at least one of the other ones. And so, I possibly feel that, but I do feel good about, all of those players playing indoors, predominantly in the fantasy regular season all the way up until the end of the year. So I do think that I do have a lot of upside tying myself to one of the best offenses in the league. And then you get into these later rounds here. This is where it really gets crazy. You really just do not know what's going to happen, because you start looking past round 10 and, look, there's Jonathan Brooks went at 11.5. I felt like I got a really good value there, albeit he's going to miss some time. You got Tajay Spears making it all the way into the middle of the 12th round. Keenan Allen making it all the way into the middle of the 12th round. I was very surprised to see him continue to drop. And I think, like, looking at it, DJ Moore fell beyond where I thought he was going to be. Keenan Allen fell beyond where I thought he was going to be. Rome Odunze fell beyond where I thought he was going to be. So, you know, my league just wasn't in on the Bears. And if something like that happens with, you know, the skilled players on one of the teams, you should try and take advantage of that if you think the offense is going to be better than the rest of your league mates anticipate. You can also see Jerome Ford in the 13th round. I thought that was a really good pick. I think he's going to be the lead rusher for at least the first 6 weeks, really. Maybe Chubb is back during that time, but I think he's at least going to be working back in, trying to get back up to speed in the offense. And I really think Ford is going to be a factor all year, so I really liked that pick. DeAndre Hopkins, middle to end of the 13th round. They're starting to say that he might be ready for the start of the year, so that could be a very good value as well. So, you know, there's just guys that kind of fell all over, right? And taking advantage and being aware and knowing where you're comfortable taking some of these guys, I think is a huge benefit, right? Because in the mock drafts that we've done, I've gotten no Keenan Allen, right? Like, these guys are going much earlier than this. So it is good to know where you are willing to strike on players. And if you do start passing on guys, making sure that you do have a spot where you do feel comfortable taking players at value, and don't just get set so much in all of the guys that you mock late. So, and then, you know, some kickers and defenses went at the end, right? But you can see not everybody took a kicker in defense. Some people took just a kicker. Some people didn't take any. Some people took just a defense. So you can see how I kind of rounded my team out here. And I knew that we have 2 IR spots, and we're allowed to put PUP players on IR spots. And so I knew I took Jonathan Brooks, who's on the PUP. And then I decided, instead of going in on a defense, or a kicker, I decided to go in on TJ Hawkinson, another guy that's on PUP, right? And so then I took those players right after the draft. I put them in my IR slots, and I picked up a kicker in defense. So I do, if you're able to, right? I don't think you should force that sort of thing. But if you get in on Brooks, say, I would recommend picking another player that's on PUP, or just, you know, if you have one spot, moving him into PUP and passing on a kicker or a defense and taking an additional player in your draft, so that, you know, you don't get, somebody doesn't make a pickup right after the draft that you would potentially want. So take advantage of the time here that you have and the picks that you have here. And if you're able to avoid the kicker and defense, that's another great thing about drafting on Sleeper. They don't force you to fill in your spots like ESPN does. And I think it's a really good strategy and something that can help elevate the rest of your bench spots on your team. And, you know, if we haven't highlighted it, I do think that every single roster spot that you have is important. You obviously want to get the best starters you can, but I think you also want to get the very best bench players that you can as well, and continually try and improve every single roster spot that you have to build the overall best team possible. So, all right. And with that, if you guys want to look at this anymore, go ahead and pause the video, take a peek at where guys are going. But overall, very happy with how this draft turned out. You know, quarterbacks flew off the board. Like, you know, the top 11 were gone by 3-7. So, you know, even though they don't go quite as early in our draft, they did go pretty quickly in the 3rd round there. Hopefully this was helpful, and you know, hopefully you can learn something from this draft and apply it to your home league drafts and improve your chances at getting the best team you possibly can. And with that, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one.